Out of all the fighting games I played in the early to mid 90s, the game that intrigued me and impressed me the most was Virtua Fighter. I remember seeing Virtua Fighter in the bowling alley arcade in 1994 or so. I just remember seeing the cabinet with the joystick and the 3 buttons with the metallic futuristic design. It looked cool. I was tall enough to reach everything, so that wasn't a problem. Seeing the 3D visuals of Virtua Fighter just blew my mind. The 3D models were so clear and pristine. It was almost like I was looking into the future. It reminded me the first time I wore glasses after living a few years completely blurry. I was amazed at the animation of the 3D models, the shadows, and even the backgrounds. The backgrounds looked so serene. They were simple, but easy to look at. The music of Virtua Fighter I loved so much. Very clear, very melodic, very futuristic, bright, clean, easy to listen to without being boring, and full of life and energy. Actually playing the game, I have very brief memories of. Sometimes I will have more time and quarters to play than other times. I remember randomly seeing ads for the Sega Saturn with Virtua Fighter packed in. I wanted it so bad. Getting a new system so soon to me was a luxury and a dream, so I knew I had to wait for a while. I wanted to play Virtua Fighter so bad, I even had the LCD Tiger handheld game. My sister took me shopping with her at the Mall of America. I knew we would stop in the arcade for games, and I knew Virtua Fighter would be there. I was so ready. Come to find out, Virtua Fighter wasn't there. Instead was Virtua Fighter 2. I was so surprised. I didn't hear about this at all. I didn't see this in any video game magazines. I completely missed this. Virtua Fighter 2 was an incredible update compared to Virtua Fighter 1. So much more detail in the graphics. 3D models didn't look so blocky, had more fluid animations, and the backgrounds were more detailed too. Also notice the roster has increased. 2 new characters, Shun-Di and Leon. I was in love, and my sister let me play for a while too. A few months later, I bought a gaming magazine and I learned that Virtua Fighter 2 would be released on the Sega Saturn. I read this magazine from front to back so much, especially the article on Virtua Fighter 2. A year and some months later, around late 1996 to early 1997, a friend of mine got a Sega Saturn for their birthday with Virtua Fighter 2. I was so jealous that I didn't have my own Sega Saturn and my own Virtua Fighter 2. We would play often, but nothing beats having a game at your own house. I had to settle for Virtua Fighter 2 on the Sega Genesis at the time. I didn't like it. Going from that to the Saturn version was like night and day. Thank God my mom got me my own Sega Saturn where I can play Virtua Fighter 2 at home. I remember playing every single day. I finally remember falling in love with the music on Leon's stage.
Fight! 1, ready, go! I don't make it a habit to fight the elderly. Fight! 2, ready, go! KO!
Reading the manual, I got a good sense of the plot or lore of the game, knowing each character's fighting styles and their own individual stories. Nothing too deep though. I do feel and agree with others that the lore of Virtua Fighter is kind of weak. The rest of the game I love so much. I didn't have too many people to play with regularly, so I just stuck with playing the CPU and friends and family randomly. Around the time I had a Saturn, I really wanted to play Fighting Vipers, so my mom had to sit on layaway at Kmart, and I took it home within a few weeks. I love that game too. It felt like Virtua Fighter 2, but more punk.
Begin. Go!
I did learn and know about Fighter's Megamix. I borrowed a copy from a local video game shop. I liked it, but for some reason, it didn't give me the same feel out of it from playing Virtua Fighter 2 and Fighting Vipers. Maybe it was the visuals. I do feel that visually, it isn't as good as Virtua Fighter 2 and Fighter's Megamix. I do love the amount of content in the game though. I also tried out Virtua Fighter Kids on Sega Saturn. One of my friends that had a Sega Saturn let me borrow it for a while. I thought it was a cool, cute rendition on Virtua Fighter 2. The big heads with the short limbs with the Virtua Fighter 2 gameplay intact was really fun and silly. Visually and graphically, it looked just as clear and clean as Virtua Fighter 2. I also did like the different versions of the background game music from Virtua Fighter 2 as well.
Fight! 3, ready, go!
In 1998 or so, I went to the arcade in Mall of America and I stumbled upon, randomly without prior knowledge, Virtua Fighter 3. I was so surprised by this game. It definitely felt like a very big upgrade compared to Virtua Fighter 2, but kept the same spirit and style. I noticed the stages were different too. The rings weren't just square anymore. They had more shape and depth to them. Definitely more adventurous. Characters had different costumes and there were 2 new characters to explore. Then I learned it was releasing on the newly announced Dreamcast at the time, titled Virtua Fighter TB or Team Battle. Out of all the Virtua Fighter games I played, Virtua Fighter 3 is the one I've played and know of the least. I tried a little bit of 3 Team Battle, and at the time, I remember not liking it very much. The warm, innovative enthusiasm of Virtua Fighter 1 and Virtua Fighter 2 wasn't there for me. Maybe if I tried it again, I would feel different.
1, ready, go!
The only experience I had with Virtua Fighter 4 is with Evolution on PlayStation 2. My friend had it and I would go over to his house and play for hours. I even tried to main Go, the judo master, even though I couldn't practice. I also tried out the tutorial mode and quest mode. Those two modes were the best single player modes I ever played in a fighting game. Extremely well done and helpful to improve one's gameplay. The feel I got from playing Virtua Fighter 4 Evolution felt like a true expansion and growth from Virtua Fighter 1 and 2. It felt contemporary but not trendy. If anything, I thought it would give other 3D fighters new ideas and concepts to work on with and expand upon. Virtua Fighter 5 I caught on to kinda late. I guess it didn't grab me at first. When Final Showdown was released, those old feelings from Virtua Fighter 1 and Virtua Fighter 2 came back to me. I tried it out at the tournament final round in 2012 and I loved it. I even had a Virtua Fighter 5 Final Showdown t-shirt that I wore a lot. The biggest omission was the lack of quest mode and the highly deep tutorial mode. With that gone, I felt a little disappointed. Those two modes were the soul of Virtua Fighter 4 EVO. Not having it in Virtua Fighter 5 Final Showdown just didn't feel right. Quest mode was in original Virtua Fighter 5, thankfully, but not having it in Final Showdown just rubbed me the wrong way. Hopefully it returns in a future title. Beyond that, Final Showdown, I had a lot of fun playing with online. I looked up match videos, studied materials at VFDC, and played lots of matches. Playing Ultimate Showdown and REVO feels so good to me. I do feel like a kid again playing the recent titles. I didn't even expect to keep playing Virtua Fighter as a grown adult, thinking back as a kid. I'm glad Sega is keeping Virtua Fighter alive for the older fans and newer fighting game players. It's the first 3D fighting game I was introduced to. Even if I'm not a fan of every single entry or version, it's good that they kept it going. I will still and always love the Virtua Fighter series. In the comments, let me know what's your favorite Virtua Fighter game. What's the first Virtua Fighter game that you played? And who are your favorite characters? Let me know.
Ready, go! Yeah!